mentioned the aging population, which is a major problem, is it not?
Yes, I mean the population is getting older. In fact, it's less of a problem in the UK than most other Western countries. The problem of ageing is absolutely extreme in countries like Italy, Japan, even China, because of the long-term effects of their one-child family policy. I mean, the population of Italy is actually dying out. We're not quite in that state. One of the reasons why it's not quite such an extreme problem in the UK is actually because of immigration, which I know is politically highly charged and people get very worked up about it, but it has made sure that the population structure of the UK is reasonably healthy, and you have a lot of young people who are working and paying taxes. But yes, it is a problem in the very long term, and one of the things which I found most disappointing about the last few weeks is that the tribal warfare amongst our political parties has prevented any sensible discussion of long-term care and how you pay for it, because it can't be done through the government entirely. You've got to have a private contribution, whether it's insurance premium or when people die. I mean, you know, different options. You've got to have a grown-up debate about it. And I mean, that's one of the many issues. Public sector pensions is another, where parties are just going to have to get out of this traditional tribal way of thinking and slagging off your opponents the whole time in order to work together on these problems. I mean, one of the things we have to do coming out of this election is to reform our completely dysfunctional political system that prevents us thinking about problems like the one you've described.
One word which you've used many times in your talk was the word growth. Now, in developing countries, one obviously sees the need for growth as very, very essential. For how long can, if I might say, a mature economy, like our own, or the States, or Europe, how long is that model going to be viable? Bearing in mind things like energy and finite resources. Can we forever continue to hang on to this one word of growth to keep it going?
Well, I was talking about growth in the sense of recovery from this depression. I've had arguments in the past with extreme environmentalists who say what Britain needs is a zero growth economy. Well, we've got one, and it's not very nice, and it means a lot of people are hurt and a lot of people are unemployed. So, you know, there is an argument, obviously, for dynamism. I think the key point which comes out of your question is that, yes, growth is important, but it's got to be environmentally sustainable. And perhaps I should have put a bit more emphasis on the fact that this investment, which we're going to have is in low carbon development of various kinds, and is environmentally much more attuned than it's been in the past. But I don't think that a sort of prolonged period of stagnation is going to help anybody, and it would simply create an extremely vicious politics, because the losers would become extremely angry. So you do need dynamism, but it's got to be environmentally friendly.
Thank you. Gentleman there.
Yes, it's picking up on that last question. The Lib Dems have said that they'd like to see a green revolution and a Green New Deal. Would you care to expand on how that might work?
Well, the concept of a Green New Deal, it's a nice slogan, and it sort of captures the idea that on the one hand we need job creation, and on the other hand that it should be environmentally sustainable. That's essentially what it means. I see this happening in several ways. I mean, in the short run, despite government funding problems, governments are going to have to give some priority to job creation schemes, because otherwise you're going to have 2.5 to 3 million people sitting around on the dole for years. So something will have to be done, and those job creation projects can operate in a way that is environmentally sensible. And one obvious way of doing it is the refurbishment of empty property. We've got hundreds of thousands of properties sitting around the country which are in bad shape, which are not occupied. Another way is by insulating homes and having a really focused national programme to do it. And then in the longer term, the infrastructure bank concept, it could have a very strong environmental focus to it, rebuilding the rail system, new energy sources and providing the grid link-ups for them. So, again, it links to the previous question. The Green New Deal is essentially about how you create employment and growth, but in a way that is environmentally sound.
Okay, I'll take just one more, please.
In reality, how much control do we have over the recovery of our country? We now live in a global economy. When Lawson had to devalue the pound, we had some control. 20 years on, we no longer have that control, I would suggest to you. And that whilst it's very nice for us to talk about recovery in the UK, we're very much dependent on the international community. So, given that, how do you see us being able to progress independently?
Well, you're quite right that in a globalised economy, the freedom of scope for national governments is necessarily circumscribed. So that you cannot, no future Chancellor or Prime Minister can command the recovery of the British economy independent of what happens everywhere else. But that isn't to say that you have to be completely passive and that nothing can be done. Of course it can be done at a national level and indeed at a local level. I mean, actually an awful lot's been done by enterprising councils to fend off some of the worst effects of recession and to create a good business environment locally. So a lot can be done. I think what your question's hinting at is that if the international environment were to deteriorate, and it could do, there's serious problems in parts of Western Europe, as we know, Greece, Spain, Italy, that could gain momentum. There are plenty of signs that the American recovery is very fragile. It could be that what's happening in China has the nature of a bubble economy, that's possible, and that all of this could go pop. And if it does, well, we're going to be dragged down with it. Of course that's right. We've got to be realistic about it. But the conclusion one draws from it is not that there's absolutely nothing you can do, because there's a lot that can be done. And I think the other conclusion, which is very important, is that we need to keep an international outlook. One of the reasons why this crisis hasn't been as profound as in the 1930s is that governments have worked together rather than fought each other. In the 30s you had protectionist trade warfare, which then led to war. This time round we've recognised that there are two superpowers, the Americans and the Chinese, and they're working together despite ideological problems, despite frictions, and they realise that either they hang together or they hang separately. And we've got to keep that clear focus, because if we don't, the future is grim indeed.